I was gonna say a good way to find topics. There was a tweet the other day. There's this guy that's like a copywriter, and he's like, these are the things. If you focus your copywriting around these things, like you can always trigger emotion, which will trigger action. And it was love, power, wealth, beauty, respect, freedom, happiness, fulfillment. So I think any of those things, like, I don't know. I feel like
Just
are drivers.
mundane topics like that.
And just like that, everything, if it's tied to those things, that's where people like find value, I feel like, or find emotion, which triggers action.
Mm-hmm. Did you? Oh, you just read that tweet?
Yeah, yeah. But just like looking through life through those lenses, or like, I guess, communication or persuasion or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, however you want to define it.
Do you know this thing called the Barnum Effect?
I think I've heard of it, but I don't.
I think we've
What's
talked
the?
about it. It's basically this. There was this guy, P.T. Barnum. I think he was a psychologist, but might have just been some sort of researcher. And he like sort of described this psychological effect that there are these class of statements that you can say to someone that when the person hears them it sounds very very like personal, but they're actually like super general statements that apply to anyone. So it's part of the
Oh, like,
reason
yeah, yeah,
horoscopes are
astrology or
so,
something.
yeah, exactly. So when I was in boot camp, coding boot camp, um, our first project, a command line interface project, uh, my partner and I built like a fake. It was, we told people it was like a dream interpreter, but it was really like a troll dream interpreter. And what it did is it would like prompt people to sort of, it'll ask people, hey, what did you dream about last night? And you would, or what is a dream that you've had in the past, that is, on your mind or you think about a lot. They'll say something like, oh, I was being chased by wolves, I was so afraid, and then I fell off a cliff and landed in a tree made out of cotton candy, something like that, right? So we used, I believe it was a Google API that did like sentiment analysis of like keywords
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sentences. And so we would just run that and then it would like say back to the person, hey, based on what you told us, we can tell that when you had this dream, you were in an anxious or happy or excited state, whatever the like the dominant sentiment analysis was. And then we would give the analysis of the dream part, which is leveraging this Barnum effect thing that says, you can say
Dude,
these
yeah.
super like general statements to people, and they're gonna think it's like super like
Accurate.
applicable to them. So we were telling people like, oh yeah, like it's like tailored to you, it's super like related, but to what you're going through. But what we had done is we just like hard coded like, I don't know, like 30 to 40 like random
20 different things.
sentences
Yeah.
and then like strung them together based on how long their input was. So it would be like that dream that I just
No, I know.
described,
Just staple it.
like, and then it'd be like, Marco, I can tell based on what your dream is that you feel like you want to share more of yourself with the world, both with the people you love and the people that
Sure.
don't know you, but you feel held back by your current commitments and relationships. And people would do this and be like, oh my God, how did you
I know.
know?
I
That's
know.
how I feel all the time.
I feel like that's how people like. So many people fall into defaults. Like people, like there's a reason like Facebook ads and all these ads are so like effective. It's like, yes, everyone's like individual, but like there are, I don't know, many things that apply to many people. Um,
Yeah,
I
well,
feel like if that idea was taken too, and you like, what's that OpenAI model, like the GT3, whatever
the
its name is, like
GTP2, something like that, that comes
whatever.
up with
If you
like
like,
text.
yeah, yeah, if you strap that idea into that, you probably get, instead of the 20 or 30 hard coded things, it probably would produce like someone's actual future. Like, um,
That might be the startup idea
there's a
right
thing
there.
called, literally, there's a thing called copy AI, where like you describe your product and then it like pumps out like
It like writes copy
copy
for it.
for your product.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like this is like applicable. I'm sure there's like a way to tailor it even more.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
A friend of
There's,
mine, go ahead.
I was going to say, in terms of that project idea, Jay and I, and Zach and Isabella, that was like one of the first things I did when I got into coding was we did this like hackathon. And what we
With the
built
tree,
basically
right?
was like, No, that was their like other some kind of like CS art project. This one was like an AI psychologist, and
Hmm.
basically it was just like you would speak into this your phone. It would record like you'd tell it like the app like how your day was. It would record it, and we'd use like the same thing like the Google API, like get the sentiment from it, and then we also used this like band, which like was for meditation, but you can use it to like read people's like brain waves, and we were gonna like put that into a model and like see if we can determine between the sentiment plus like reading the waves, like if there was something we could tell. But I think even without that, like honestly, just keeping track of your like mood every day is probably like super interesting. And like I'm
Yeah.
sure if you like zoom out to like the week or the month or the year, like the year is
Hmm.
probably so interesting. It's just like different seasons
Well,
or like having shit happen. Like
who's that guy who wrote the Flywheel book? Jim something. Um, he wrote that Flywheel book, From Good to Great, I think is the name of the book.
oh, Jim Collin
Jim Collins.
or
Yeah,
something like
he
that.
was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and one of the things he said is like for the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, every single day he does like a written analysis of how his day was, and he includes metrics like, rate your day 1 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
include a few things you've done today, how do you feel, like thoughts, gratitude, all these kinds of things. And I mean, he commented on it like it is a hard practice for most people to maintain, but the amount of value I've gotten from this has been like insane, because he talks about, you the bias of memory is such that and it's kind of a double-edged sword that like the bad times in the past get numbed out, but it's also, we tend to not really remember things, but we remember remembering things. So kind of like it's this weird
Sure.
recursive loop that gradually like shifts our memory of actual events. And so he was talking about that. And then Stephen Wolfram also, with his like the language he created, um, Wolfram's scripting language, he has been tracking like personal metrics, like things that, like so many different things about himself for like going back 40 years. So he has like in one of his books that I have, like he shows different visualizations of different like personal metrics he's recorded. So one thing is like uh, average time of day over the last 40 years that I send emails, and it shows like a really cool picture, and it actually like reveals his sleep patterns. He
Sure.
like shows his like heart rate variability over the last 40 years or whatever, 30 years since he was able to track it. And it's like it, there was a certain pattern, and then the pattern shifted, and he was able to like say, oh, like it shifted. One shift was when I started working on a stand-up desk, but I used a treadmill. It's like a treadmill desk. And the
Sure.
other thing was um, when I discovered that walking outside actually lowered my heart rate variability, or like produced a more like a healthier number. uh, he like built this little like walking desk that he would walk outside and take meetings outside on his property. Um, there's actually a really good blog post he released called something like "In Search of the Productive Life," which we'll put in the show notes. And yeah, it's a really good read. But I don't remember exactly how we got there. Talking about like tracking personal data and seeing like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
value of that.
tracking. I mean, I'm sure if we took like if somehow they might honestly, if Apple like opened up your data where you can like interact with it better, like I'm sure you could like piece together like screen time and different app usage and probably like find out such interesting things.
Hmm.
And I'm Google has a perfect. Someone said once they like Google has a see where Maps is like tracked your phone, and like it's just like you realize how habitual your daily pattern is, and like I don't know, all this data is there. You just gotta like put it together, I guess.
Yeah. Yuval talks about that. How, remember in his most recent book, the 21 Lessons book, where he talks about like the big thing to realize in the 21st century is that human beings are becoming hackable, because like these huge
Sure.
companies are collecting all this sort of data, and as like uh, biotechnology and biofeedback like tracking technology continues to evolve and get better, like all of a sudden they're going to be collecting data about like how your body works, you know? And it's like there is going to be a
Sure,
lot of
sure.
incentive for
There's
most
already like
people. Go ahead.
there's already like the Aura ring or whatever, right? And it's just gonna get in like Fitbit, and it's only gonna get more, you know, more granular data. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's also more invasive. Like,
Yeah, and he talks about potentially, scary situations where, let's say, you have a country with a totalitarian government, and they're able to monitor like how people react to sort of government like propaganda or other sorts of things, and can
sure,
use like variations in people's responses as the basis for doing horrible things like putting people into detention or like jail or some sort of
sure,
punishment. Weird shit is coming.
yeah. Have you seen like, I guess to go on to like a futures here now, like the futures is now a situation. Like, did you see that? Read that thing about what happened in Canada? Um, there's like that trucking protest where apparently like a bunch of truckers are like protesting vaccine mandates, so they're like blocking off like roads and bridges, and then the government decided to like shut down people's like bank accounts
That was
with
today, right?
no like
Or like,
court order. Yeah, it was like today or yesterday. So what it was like,
yeah,
yeah, super super recent,
I
and
saw.
people are like tweaking.
Yeah, I saw probably the same tweet that you saw, where someone said like, "This is the end of Canadian democracy," which probably is hyperbolic, but the idea, but maybe not. Um, yeah, like Trudeau approved a mandate to shut off these people's like to
Mhm.
shut off their access to their funds, their bank accounts, and their credit cards
Right,
without. But it was also
and
like
like
just based on
GoFundMe too.
suspicion. Yeah, the GoFundMe thing. I don't.
Yeah,
What was the GoFundMe thing? Like GoFundMe suppressed.
they like submitted to the government and was and like turned off the fundraiser because I think they were using that to fund the like protests and stuff, and
Mhm.
GoFundMe like shut off the campaign, or I don't know if they stopped funds or just shut off the campaign, but I guess they went, yeah, to
Mhm.
shut off. So I'm curious what's on the micro scale. Like, yes, like these people are like causing trouble and like, whatever, like they're disrupting society. They might think that mandates are also a disruption, but um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting. I think that act should be more deliberate than like such a response, like reactive response to the situation.
Mhm. Well, I mean, there is a precedent in democracy and free society for peaceful civil disobedience, right? Um, as long as like they're not making it so that people who need to go to the hospital can't get to the hospital,
Sure,
or
sure,
people who are in sort of you know situations that would be like harmed by these truckers like halting traffic on these key roads. It's interesting
right.
how this stuff like ties into, I think, what everyone talks about these days, and I think you and I would like say it was like written in Ray's book, how he says he's analyzed the rise and fall of societies, and one of the things that happens when a society is falling is this continuing gap that's growing in like people's values, and like people become like factionalized, um, sort of. And we see that playing out today, where a portion of, and definitely like magnified and amplified by media, but like kind of like super freedom on one side and super censorship or super like sensitivity on the other side. And like, I don't
Sure.
know, seems like how do we fix it? How do we bridge the gaps? Do we want to fix it? Do people think it's a problem? I remember
Facts.
I think Ray talked about this, and I also listened to it on some podcast where um like when Biden was elected, like a significant, I don't know if majority is the right word, but a non-negligible like demographic basically believed that it was rigged, and like whether it is or it isn't is besides the point. Uh, I think they were like describing like this hasn't really happened in the history of this country before, where like that many people just didn't accept the outcome of like a democratic
Sure.
election. And what's going to happen, in 2024.
24. Yeah. Who knows? I think things are like, yeah, like we said, like just gonna get crazier and crazier. And who knows what's like 2 years from now? Who even knows what 6 months from now? Like at the rate things have been changing.
Facts.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So I guess could be a good pause to do an introduction. Probably should put this at the beginning, but this is uh, first our V1 of trying to do a podcast, and yeah, this is our go. So I'm Marco.
I am Tamor. We have been kind of sort of talking loosely about doing a podcast probably for like 8 years, maybe like a pretty long time. 5 years, 6 years, who knows? But yeah, we decided like there's no point in not doing it anymore. Like just put it out there. If it sucks, we'll keep going. It'll get better with time. It's relatively low effort to do. We do talk on the phone quite a bit, and when we're like in the same city, we chill all the time and we have great conversations. So there's no downside, and this is all because we want to launch a worldwide fashion brand in a couple of years. So this is our fashion brand, fashion
Sure,
band.
sure.
But yeah,
Um,
we met in college. What, like 2014, 2015, something like that.
14, yeah.
14, 15. Had we lived on the same floor in the
But
dorm
one
in our
good
dorm.
conversation.
One good conversation the whole year. I don't think we actually liked each other that much that first year. Um,
Yeah.
but we had one good conversation where kind of randomly you like came into my room and we just like talked about like books and like what we thought. And that was kind of it. And
Some
then
shit doesn't change.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
randomly 2 years later, we lived in the same
Live
house,
together.
kind of just coincidentally. And we're both from New York. We went to school in California. So there was a bit of like, oh, we're both from the East Coast and just became boys living in that house, along with Sack and Jay living in Fishbowl. And yeah, that house was definitely, that year in that house was full of very spirited and always stimulating conversations, whether we're talking about uh, how not to burn bread or how biology works.
Literally, Brett.
Bread. Yeah,
Literally.
yeah, bread. Yeah, they both moved back to New York and have been boys for a long time and just thought, why not do this? We think that who we were, 4 or 5 years ago, would people like that might be interested in the type of conversations we have. Maybe not, but it's possible. We both like read a lot of books. We both enjoy having similar types of conversations, similar values, have done a lot of stuff together, and thought it was a good idea to do this because why not?
But I'm curious to see how these things age. I think like we were talked about before about like recording things, right? Like keeping track of mood, various different things. Like I wonder if we recorded our conversations back then, how like I hope we'd love them. I mean, I feel like then we'd like I don't know, we'd be in a much better place if we found those funny.
Yeah, I think
But
that would
I'm
be
sure
funny.
this will age. It'll be hilarious, like listening to this and watching it. Like who knows, 20 years from now.
Yeah, definitely.
But
If AI hasn't taken over and killed us all.
later. Um, but yeah, I think we'll try to keep it like relatively short and like just so we can iterate quickly and see what we like, don't like. But yeah, maybe
Or
we'll
not. I
go
mean,
through
there's
like one more topic.
there's an argument for the contrary, right? Like Rogan, whatever you think about him,
Sure.
biggest podcast on the planet, and just started off without any agenda, just talking shit with his friends. And those episodes would go for 2 to 4 hours, and they just be like jumping from topic to topic. And um, I think I think that in podcasting, it's really just about consistency. Because I was thinking about it this way. I was talking to my girlfriend about it. Like, I think she should start a podcast because she's a very interesting person to talk to. And I think podcasting of this kind, where it's just conversations, not really like trying to tell a story or um, no agenda really. I think what it is like your fan base is just going to be the people that would be friends with you if you could meet them, but because of geographical or like time constraints, you don't get to be friends with them.
Fact. No, I agree. I think yeah, I think that's the case, and I think people naturally gravitate towards communities that they like. And I feel like I don't know. I think we both are a fan of this guy named Balaji, and I feel like he talks a lot about how things are moving away from like geographical tribes to like
Digital.
cultural tribes, and I feel like that's yeah, like I feel like that's what we're in the process of. So,
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
yeah. So we have a few topics here. Which should we jump into one and
Should we do
I know
this
we've
one?
already riffed.
Should we do this one that I'm highlighting right now?
Uh, Later.
Um, let's start. I guess jump in to. I like the idea of hack college, like hack to college. What did you mean by that?
Um, oh yeah, this was just like I think there are a bunch of hacks at college, and I think we could probably dive into that for like hours. But one I thought that was really that has stuck with me through time. I feel like is that like information you learn mostly goes in one ear and out the other, but like some some of that information doesn't, and what you find like looking back on over the years is the most valuable. I find is like really the professor and not as much the subject. And I think any like a great professor can make like any topic super interesting, and a
Mm-hmm.
bad professor can take a super interesting topic and make it like shit. So like I think it's just like such a hack to really like go to pick your classes by your professors over like the specific classes. And we have our favorite professor, Dr. Carroll, and he's like I don't know, both of us has been like played a huge role
Mm-hmm.
in how we think and how we act. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's pretty true. I remember Pappas told me, a professor we both had in college, told me once that one of the main things to do in college is to sort of develop who you are, like the adult that you're going to be. And one of the main things she said was like learn how to like develop your coping mechanisms. I think if we sort of expand that, I do think there are many unique approaches to college, and one of the most important things is to the degree you can as a 17 or 18-year-old like figure out what your long-term goal is and see how it can fit into how college can fit into and bring you closer to that long-term goal. But I think what you're saying about picking like modulating your like the classes you take based on professors that have really good reputations is a really good approach, because oftentimes sometimes the right teacher can give you can like nurture or like completely birth an enthusiasm that you may have like in a topic, right? Like
Facts.
if we think about Carol, like it's hard to say what his class was about, but like at the surface level, his class was about like critical thinking and argumentation. And I feel like before that, I never thought about like thinking, like the meta of thinking and how to think. I didn't really think like I didn't.
The crazy thing though is it's packaged as a like English class,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's like I feel like he could have taught math or like any class and somehow turned it into this like
Hmm.
critical thinking class. Because I mean, I think that's like yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, when I think about the thread of what we learned in his class to right now, it's very much like kind of treating your thinking process almost like proofreading. Like, when you write a paper and, you sort of go over a
Sure.
couple edits, every edit, whatever you're trying to clean up, you'll see things, either syntax wasn't good, a sentence wasn't succinct, the structure of overall, like the flow of logic from
Mhm.
the beginning to the end was not as tight as it could be. So on a first edit, you improve these things, then you look at it a couple of days or weeks or months later and sort of do another refinement process. And I think Carroll used writing and argumentation as a sort of uh, like as a like an application of overall how to like think more clearly and reason better, which is like
Mhm.
you have your first conclusion about something, and then to like go back and question it, like, why do I think that this is true? Do I have evidence that this is true? Also, like, do I believe in this for like logical or emotional reasons? And then if I communicate this to other people, they are not going to have the same like emotional basis for this. So how do I convey and appeal to like different aspects of like people we're talking to, whether it's emotion, logic, fear, blah blah blah. Yeah, and I think
Facts.
if you were going through like college, choosing your classes based just on like subjects you like and subjects you don't like, you could easily not take an English class because you think like, I'm not interested in reading Hemingway or Ursula Le Guin. I just want to take this business class and graduate and make a ton of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think it's facts, and I think Carol's process of like editing and iterating on your thoughts is like, I don't know, broadly applicable. And I think, like I said, for this podcast, right, like do version one and then like do a riff off of it. And I think people should, I don't know, I think it could be applicable to like any belief. Like you can believe in something for a bit and then like have the humility to be like, okay, this was
Mhm.
wrong, but we've edited it and now we're moving on to something else. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, just a useful framework. And I think that's a big chunk of this podcast, right? Is like reflecting back on old things and
Mhm.
yeah, seeing what we would change or what we do better.
So if I
I'm
ask
curious
you,
on your take.
okay, go ahead.
I'm curious on your take on um, like going to college and studying something like a hard skill versus like a soft skill. So like someone studying accounting versus, let's say, which is like hard skill, you can graduate and immediately like get a hard like accounting job versus like economics where you're more learning like theory and stuff like that. What's your take on that? And I feel like there might not be one right answer, but I'm just curious. Yeah, what's your
I don't think there's one right answer because I think people are going to college for different reasons. If someone is going to college because they're trying to like they have a necessity to advance their life, whether they come from some sort of like less fortunate like upbringing or background, they're going to treat college very differently than someone who is just doing it because it's the thing to do. And I'm that age, so I'm going to go and still take it seriously, but
sure?
like the stakes are different. So I think like establishing stakes is a very important thing, and I think that actually should modulate, like it should influence your approach to it. Like, what are the stakes? Am I going to graduate and
Yeah,
like I have connections and I'll get a job, or like do I want to go into academia? So it definitely um, the first thing is like really knowing, I believe, what do I want to get out of this, and like having that not be an abstract goal. I think having like a specific goal, even if that is like I want to be a professor, so I'm going to go through college and like enjoy the classes I like, find the thing
sure.
I like. That's number one. I think Nassim Taleb's barbell approach, like his anti-fragile way of thinking about things, um, is a good like mental model to apply to this sort of thing. And like basically, I mean, this, but what he says is like uh, it's you get the most potential for upside without like damaging, like without incurring like a huge like downside risk by like approaching things so that you are investing your time and resources into things that are on the one hand very secure and then on the opposite like highly risky, right? And he says he
Mhm.
calls this a barbell because if you imagine like what a barbell looks like is you have this like basically this pole with weights on either side, but the middle of it is completely empty. So if you can imagine one side is like highly risky, one side is highly secure, and um, this approach can be sort of seen in a lot of different areas in life, whether it's like your career, um, your approach to college, your approach to investing, exercise, diet, all these kinds of things. So I would say, like as a college student, if there's a way to have your cake and eat it too, like definitely utilize the opportunity to explore, but don't do that at the risk of being in a like not good situation when you graduate.
But so
What do you
like
think?
have something secure, but also like explore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious. I wonder if there's like a way to build like flow charts or like a model of like, okay, like, I don't know, like you said, like people have different circumstances entering college, like based on like your starting point, your end point, if there's like an ideal way to call it, like through college, like should you fast track, do something that's like hard skills? Should you do soft skills? Should you like take a gap year? Should like, I don't know. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's probably a more systematic approach that would like, I feel like could work really well. Because I feel like right now everyone does the same thing, right? Whether you're like you said, you come from like $1 million and you like, you can get a job out of college versus someone like you said who's needs to grind and get good grades. Like, but everyone kind of, I mean, does their own iterative version. But like, yeah, I feel like there's probably an optimized path for each. Like,
Maybe I think there's an optimized patch for each goal, optimized path for each goal that someone can have. I don't think there's like one right way to do
yeah,
it because like also there's
no,
trade
no, no,
offs
that's
and
what
like
I'm saying. Like,
so what would
I
you have
think
done
like if
differently
it's
knowing what you know now?
I think my always like ideal approach to college would be like go to college freshman year, take like all the core classes, like whatever, just get to know what college is like, have fun, the whole nine. Then I think it's really valuable to do a gap year and
Mm-hmm.
then like, okay, I know what college is about, but now the gap year is like, I'm going to see what the real world is like, get a sense of like what it's like to make a buck and like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, travel a bit and just kind of like broaden your horizons in that way. And then go back to school and I feel like you appreciate, okay, like I have this time where I have like a lot of free time and I'm like just investing in myself. Like I feel like people would be more focused. So yeah, I don't know. I'd probably do that, and then like in school, probably yeah, would probably do like a CS degree or something like that. Maybe a statistics degree, something that's like a hard skill. Just because I think yeah, when you get into college, it just makes like getting your foot in the door the easiest. So that's probably what I would do, and also take like some interesting classes with interesting professors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you? What if you had to go back? What would you?
Probably similar. I mean, most people say right like when they get out of college, they will say like, "Oh, college not the real world." If I knew now, like if I knew then what I know now, like college would have been so different. It would have been a breeze. I would have capitalized on these opportunities versus those. And I think like a good meta question to have just as you're going through like any period of life is like, what opportunities are available are like which opportunities that are like readily or easily available to me right now that won't be as easily available to me when I'm older, um,
Mm-hmm.
are worth like devoting more time to or like taking advantage of. And I think like in college,
Sure.
like you have no responsibility. Like what I would have done in college, honestly, I thought about this a lot. Like it would have been really cool to have a podcast where you talk to like cool professors, and like market it just to
Sure.
the student body, not like trying to be not trying to be anything, but like we had that porch swing. And imagine you
Sure.
call the podcast like the porch swing, and you
Sure.
had
And it's
like
like
Carol,
any professor. Yeah.
Keston, Zanfania, like all these professors who, um, like the professors that at any like registration time, their classes would be filled up right away. I think it would have been interesting to like create like a video, like high production quality podcast, which is basically like taking this professor's class without taking this professor's class. That would have been
Sure.
cool.
And I mean,
I
yeah,
Go ahead. I really like what you did, like
I just
having
think
a little
like,
business of cutting hair.
yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah. I
good.
think that was cool. Great. I think it was just like, I think about this often is like, what things can I do too that are like, that span like multiple parts of my life? Like going to the gym, right? It's like health, how you look, how you feel, like a social thing. Like, I don't know, like
Hmm.
reading a book, it expands to like work, to personal life, like all these things that like, yeah, I think that's one of those things that like hits not like two birds, but hits like a flock with one stone type of thing. Um, yeah.
Would
But I think a
you?
podcast would be dope because it's the same thing as well. Like
Yeah,
social, learning, professional. Like I don't know, just covers
yeah.
so many bases.
And then like imagine my friend Ryan had this idea about um, starting like a secret society on campus, and then like basically his idea was to go like recruit all of the sort of like high profile students, like whether it's like the captain of a
Sure,
sports team, or like someone who's involved in the Greek life, or someone who's like very
sure,
sort of like academically rigorous, or someone who's an artist who like is like their reputation is like an arts kid, and they actually are making cool things in the world, whatever, right? His idea was like to go and recruit those students and fabricate a history of a secret society that is connected to the Jesuits, and sort of use that as a
sure,
foundation to build this like network. And he had a lot more
sure.
funnier ideas about it, and like really cool. I don't want to steal his thunder in case he somehow does that in his future. Um, but it was really really funny.
Goes back to school at 45. No,
Yeah, as like a
that's funny.
professor and like starts this, but
Facts.
yeah, there is
I
something to be said about
I don't
like
know. Was there a
at
do you
Santa
think was
Clara.
there a secret society at school? I know.
I
I
mean, I
think there
wasn't a
was,
part of
right? I
it,
know there
so
was one. I mean, spoken like
I
a
wouldn't
like a
say.
true member.
But no, but like with like Skull and Bones, I think at Yale, like it's known who's in it. No one knows what they do, and I think that's the secret.
Sure.
Like, what do they do? And people, say all types of funny things. Um,
Facts.
yeah, but
Um,
I think in general, like the idea you just said about like having something that you do that spans across like multiple um, different areas of like life at any given period of time. I do think one of the cool things about college that becomes slightly difficult when you get older is exposing yourself to like different like basically like interests and cultures like that people have. And I don't mean that like if you're a music kid and like you're a musician as an adult in college, you can take classes with someone like who's on the rowing team as a D1 athlete. So it's like how, and I think there's a lot of value in that because you get exposed to like people who are really good at different things.
sure.
So yeah, how do you like recreate that like after college? I think that's an
Sure.
important thing for people to do.
I feel like I wonder if you could wrap it the level of. I guess the metric could be like how many new people you meet in, let's say, a day, right?
Uh
Like
huh.
I'm sure if you look through like the top, like someone's life, like it's probably like school, like you start going, it's probably pretty good, and then like high school is more, but then like college just like spikes. And I guess after work, like, I mean, after college and your work, I mean, I think it's just like yeah, proactive and like yeah, there's like many factors, but I feel like most people's graph like probably plummets where they mostly spend time with like people they
Yeah.
know and like I don't know people they work with. Like
Mhm. I think that's one of the
I don't
cool
know, but
things
I mean
about.
that. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say that's what I've like observed, but that could also just be my
Hmm.
what I've observed, small sample size. But yeah,
I think that's one of the
what
cool things about podcasting. How meta. We have our first podcast episode talking about podcasting. But like you have different podcasts like Tim Ferriss's podcast or Rogan's or just like anyone else's where, they use it as a way to like meet like people that are doing different, interesting things in life, and in the world. And I think that's like, I think it's important to like stress test your thinking and just your like way of like your like assumptions and your like way of being and like your interests and be exposed to new things all the time.
Sure.
Yeah. A topic that could be interesting to talk about and something I talk about with my sister is like how this is so stupid. Like what was what is the difference between like people who grew up with the internet versus people who didn't grow up with the internet? Like what is that like main like psychological? It's probably like you could write 10 books about that, but
Yeah, and even then, it's like a moving target. Like the internet 10 years ago, let alone like 5 years ago, like completely different than it is now. I feel like, yeah, attention spans are just like shrinking more and more. Like now, TikTok is like the app, and it's like very short content, ton of edits, like constantly changing screen, like, and that like a version of that was before, and it just seems like we're constantly like just making content that just like massages our brain in very like shallow ways now,
do you think
which can
that
be helpful. Like there are many uses. Yeah.
do you think that there is a sort of net negative? No, that's not the right way to say it. Like there are people like on the one hand, like there's always this conflict between like generations where like the older generation will be like, oh, these kids are like messing up because they don't do things the way we did. It I think people like our age like remember growing up without the internet and like when we were kids, it was very social. Like playing video games was very social. It's like going to someone's house playing
Sure.
like Mario Kart or like I remember like going on AIM was huge, like messaging and stuff on the computer,
Yeah.
but we weren't spending like our whole days on the computer when we were kids. And I think we remember what it's like to like play outside as a kid all the time and like
Sure.
have like longer attention spans. Like, do you think that that's like it's just a similar like generational like difference, or do you think like the internet, like do you think kids now have lost something fundamental because they're like using phones and Instagram and social media at like very young ages and like they might not ever have even experienced like the pleasure of like paying attention and focusing on something for a very long period of time?
Sure. Sure. I have no clue, and I think the biggest thing too is just like the lives that someone will live. Like someone who is like 10 years younger than us, like the lives they'll live are like probably going to be pretty different from the lives we live. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Like even now, like if someone is like spending, let's say they spend the last like 2 years on TikTok or Musically, whatever, like, and all they did was spend like, let's say 30 hours a week, right? Like consuming TikTok, but then they want to start a TikTok account. Like they're probably they really know the market. Like they really know how to make like,
Content.
they know what people would probably want to watch. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
someone who's like spent time deep focus and doesn't spend time on TikTok, like probably not as good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe their habits now are what is going to be beneficial in the future, but I don't know. And I think it also, you have to define we have to define what defines like good in a childhood, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My inclination is to say like it's probably not as good, and I think like our parents' generation was probably even more like, you know, human focused and more like, I don't know, a better version, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
based on the metrics we're using. But who knows? I mean, yeah, I don't even know how to like. Yeah, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that?
It definitely seems like we've passed a point of no return. That's for sure. Like I think
For sure.
the and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking about like when you were talking, what came to mind is like Jonathan Haidt in one of his books talks about how like suicide rates for like teenagers is like through the roof, and like we have data, spanning at least like 100 years of that kind of thing, and like it's like a hockey stick when you like plot it out over time. And like the change, I think he said, happened like started happening in like 2011 when like college age students got like access to like social media on their phones, is like a
Mhm.
huge sort of like statistical analysis can like show that over time like something changed in like collective mental health in this country. And is it going to be the case, like is that going to continue moving, like is the new normal going to be way sort of less mentally healthy? But at the same time, the consciousness of like, young people right now about the importance of mental health doesn't seem to be like something like our parents' generation like gave a shit about, or like talked
Sure,
about.
sure.
So yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how these things play out, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, so the comment of like no return. Like, I think like we in China, right? They like limit video game playing to like X amount of hours a week or whatever it is. Like I think that'll be like a fascinating case study and see what the results of that are. Like, will it be beneficial? Will it be negative? Like who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we're definitely like in crazier times, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the cycle of how quickly things changes has just like compressed even more. Like
Yeah.
even the shift from like Instagram to TikTok is like I would say they're like drastically different in terms of like the content and like
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And now, like, yeah, what came to mind when you were talking is like this concept of, kind of to tie this back to the truckers, but not exactly. Like, what happens when like the things we consume in a free world are like stronger in their influence on us than our resolve is to resist them? Um, what was that documentary, or like kind of documentary, like The Social Dilemma or something, that went out like a couple years ago? That was, I think it was during COVID, but about like people being like so hooked to their phones. And it was like there was that guy who was like one of the ex-founders of Facebook, like Tristan
oh yes,
Harris,
yes, 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 yes,
um,
yes.
talking about like basically what we're talking about, like the impact that like social media and like cell phones have on like our mental health, our like career satisfaction, relationship satisfaction, all these things. What role does sort of like, if we're able to identify that these things are like really hard to resist, like will we ever sort of like, is there a place to like regulate them? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a very
Sure, sure.
difficult question.
I think one of the things I think is most interesting is that like if you look, or at least from what I've heard, and I know like one example is like someone from that movie, but also that guy Chamath. Like none of these executives that are working at social media companies like use social media. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
use it as like a tool to just like you know release content, but like no one is. They're not really consuming. Uh, they're not eating their own dog food, and it's like kind of scary. Like maybe it's not dog food that should be eaten. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah,
Yeah, like Zuck doesn't let his kids use like Instagram, right? Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know if it's
I
true
mean,
or
I
not,
think
but it's
there's
definitely been reported.
something shady. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do we want to
Let's go
wrap
like
things
10
up
more
in a little bit?
minutes. Like 10 more minutes and then call it, unless you got to go.
In a little bit. Um, but maybe hit like one more topic and then yeah, we could wrap things up.
Yeah, I'm looking at this
Um,
list. Um, we did that. Kind of talked about the truckers, the current events.
why don't we talk about the last one? Like about do I go through life changing what I think about things?
Yeah, that might be hard to describe, but yeah, basically, I was in a heightened creative state the other day, and I was basically having this. I had this thought, like knowing your like approach to like how like people like I've observed that people fall into like a spectrum of like am I going to like accept my default conditioning and like versus like am I going to completely overall how I react to things. And I think like you can see this like psychological slant like play into the types of like activities and sort of pursuits people have in life. So like I was thinking about like yeah, I think that I still have to work on articulating this, but basically like do I accept that this is how I'm going to react to things and then like plan my life around like my comforts, like what I find comfortable, what I don't find comfortable, and like I'm not going to do things that don't like make me uncomfortable versus like
What's
I
like a tangible example of that? Like,
um I mean like I think a tangible example is I mean maybe a simple stupid example is like diet, like trying new foods. Like somebody might be like I like what I like, I don't care, like I'm not trying to like view eating and food as this thing that like I want to overcome my like biases my biases to like experience something deeper perhaps, and like maybe they don't think it's deeper, like versus someone who's like I want to try as many different cuisines as I can, and like if I don't like it initially I'm not going to assume that like it's gross. I'm going to try to expose myself to that slowly again and again to sort of like you know expand my palate. And I think that's not the best example. Um, you know, I think it kind of ties into like what role should comfort seeking play in your life, and I think like it does get a bad rap, like don't stay in your comfort zone, like always be pushing your boundaries, but realistically, like
sure,
everyone has aspects of their life where they are gonna like maintain a high level of comfort, and it's
sure.
just like determining
Each,
what those things are.
I think it's like you, like what you were saying before, like with the barbell approach. Like you stack your things in terms of like you have your basics, you have your things you're comfortable with, but also like constantly like exploring in little ways and like I don't know. I mean, it's as simple as like when you go out to eat, right? Like there's times where you want to eat at your like favorite restaurant, but there's times where you want to try something new, and where that like percentage falls, like I think it's for everyone to like determine. But I agree. Like I think a healthy blend is like
Mm-hmm.
important, and like the places you go to consistently are just as important as the new places you're trying. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there needs to be a balance of that. Like recently, my girlfriend and I went to a restaurant that we wanted to try for a long time, and like uh, we just went to it. It wasn't that good, and it was like for a special occasion, and we kind of felt like, okay, maybe for like special, like if you're doing a special occasion, do we go to someone that we know is good, or do we like experiment, or if we are going to
right,
experiment, do we like research like as much as we can, get recommendations, ask people. So it's a simple idea. But I think something to think about is like where are the areas of my life where like I want to be adventurous, and where are the areas of my life that like I am okay with like what I'm doing right now, and like how do I sort of evaluate those things, because no one has energy to like be pushing the boundary or like trying new ways of being in every single aspect of like behavior.
sure, sure.
Let's
Um, yeah, I agree.
maybe
I think
go ahead.
yeah, just last thing, like I don't know. I definitely want to think more about that, and like maybe we'll start off the next podcast just riffing off
Yeah.
that. But the odds we remember that will probably be pretty low. But
Well, it's on this thing. Yeah, it's on this thing.
but yeah, yeah,
How about we end with
yeah.
a Tim Ferrissy like rapid fire? Like maybe we both say
Questions.
like a recent book we've enjoyed, what we enjoyed about it, whether we'd recommend it, and then like I don't know whatever else comes to mind. But like let's do that and
Fine.
then call it.
Yeah. Do you want to? You go first because I got to pull up
Your
my
Kindle.
list here. Is there anything? I guess it could be
Yeah,
books. It could be books or
books,
like articles
ideas.
or
Yeah,
any like
anything.
even a person on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah,
Like yeah.
I guess a couple things. I've really been enjoying the All In podcast. My girlfriend introduced it to me when we started hanging out, and I started listening to it pretty like regularly. They release a new episode, I think, every Sunday, and it's for like Silicon Valley, like very successful men, Chamath, David Sachs, I forget, like something Freeberg, and then Jason Calacanis, and they just talk about like kind of what we're doing now. They just hang out as friends and talk about what's going on, like what happened that last week, and sort of like in tech, in science, in politics, and just like in culture. And it's I find them all to be very like clear thinkers, and they communicate very well. And I think a lot of people would enjoy that podcast. I've also been reading this book by Italian physicist, I think Carlo Rovelli. I have to double check his name, but he released a book I think last year called The Order of Time, and it's basically like a description of the modern sort
Oh,
of.
I think I
You've probably heard of it.
The Order of Time.
I think it's The Order of Time. I'll have to double check, but it's by this Italian physicist.
Yeah, yeah.
And I read his last book too, and his like mastery of the English language is.
What was the last one? Because I feel like I've read a book by him. Looking him up now.
Yeah, I don't remember the title of the last one, but it was also like a physics book, like kind of describing like
Yeah,
a certain topic. So this one is talking
this
about
guy
like
could be my like grandpa.
probably yeah.
Reality is not what it seems.
Yeah, that was the last one. That
That's the
one
one
was
I've heard,
amazing. Yeah.
Very
But he like almost has like a lyrical like his prose is very musical, but he's talking about the like modern thinking and conclusions about what time is from a physics perspective. And for someone who's been a physics nerd for a long time, it is like still a very mind-blowing book. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to sort of learn more about physics. Yeah.
When I typed in his name on Google and went to his books, like there's all like physics books, like mind books, and then there's a book. It deadass is like it's Vladimir Putin, life coach. It's like him posing like this. I'm like, what's good? Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that guy definitely is like top tier. Carlo Rovelli. I remember. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Things I've liked this week. So I have this book. It's actually over here. Called The World Atlas of Coffee. So there's this guy on YouTube that like is like he's kind of like Alton Brown meets like I don't know. He's just like a great like nerdy guy, but super like articulate. And he won like some like barista competition or something. Like it's actually like wild story. And he has this like really successful YouTube channel. His name is James Hoffman. And this is the book he put together. And it's just like one of those things where it's just like the deepest rabbit hole into like, an everyday topic. And it's just like really, really well done. And I've just like found it to be really interesting. Yeah, that's one thing I've really liked. And then, what was this? Oh, another thing I really liked today, I was listening to a podcast with, where Mike Posner was on. Yeah, I don't know. It like, he just has like a really interesting story, and like he just seems like a super down to earth guy. And the story behind the song "I Took a Pill in Ibiza" was like such a sad song, and like it was flipped like 180. I don't know. It was a really cool story. I can like.
No, I saw that clip. Whose podcast was that? I saw a clip.
It was Logan Paul.
It was Impulsive. His podcast is great. I think his podcast is great.
Yeah. I mean, they get top tier talent. Like,
yeah,
it's definitely great.
And it's just bros hanging out. Have you seen that clip?
Yeah.
With the Island Boys.
Yeah. Bro, those guys, where did they even come from? I feel like they came out of nowhere and then just like everywhere. Like
they're from North Beach, man. They're like right over there.
Yeah. they're just like full court pressing like the fuck like everything right now.
Yeah, the
Like
people are cutting their
they were on
ass.
yeah.
Like Snoop Dogg and Kevin Hart have
Oh,
this clip where they're just like roasting them. Like, but look, those dudes are
yeah.
doing their thing.
Did you like the halftime show?
I did. I
You
liked
watched
it
the
a
recording?
lot. Yeah, yeah. I watched it recorded. I didn't watch it
Yeah.
live. We were out to dinner, but yeah, I thought it was really impressive. One of the better halftime shows I can remember in a really long time.
Yeah.
And I like they definitely played on like the nostalgia, like
For
people
sure.
like that a large demographic like grew up with or like what were big fans of. But I thought it was great. I loved Snoop. I loved uh, Kendrick. Like I thought Kendrick was the star of the show in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Kendrick killed it. Bro,
Yeah,
he's mad small. I didn't realize.
yeah,
Like I looked at he's like mad short.
yeah. But
Um there was hilarious bro, the memes are hilarious too. Like with 50 Cent, like they're like
being
50
upside
Cent
down.
looks like he got hit by inflation. Yeah, and then there's like there's another one. Mary J. Blige is like sprawled out on the floor, and it's like when Andy comes home and all the toys hit the floor. I was dying. Mad
Yeah.
fun.
I wonder what the choice of like 50 being upside down was like. What was that? Like that was very interesting.
I
And
feel
then
like I feel like he just pushed it. He was like, they were like, all right, you're gonna be in the Super Bowl show, and he's like, bro, like, what if I was like upside down? Everyone's kind of just like, and he's like, no, it'd be sick. And then everyone's like,
yeah, fuck it,
turns
we'll go
into a
with
meme.
it. Yeah, no, it was really impressive. It was like kind of inspiring to be honest, because like all these artists coming together. Um, Snoop was doing his
Each
little
one of them could have had their own
yeah,
show.
and then I love that like you pointed this out to me, but like Anderson Paak is playing because he's from L.A. Like he's playing drums
Oh, yeah.
like when I think Eminem was performing, he was playing drums. Um, I think
Anderson
Dre
Paak,
Dre discovered him, right? Dr. Dre? I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he put him
I mean,
on.
he's so. He every time you see him, his
Yeah,
smile is hilarious, bro. That man could
yeah,
be going through like surgery with no anesthetic, and
yeah.
he'd be like ear to ear grin.
That's because he's like the type of musician that really just does it because he loves to do it. Like he wasn't.
Yeah,
This is a topic for another time, but what my like we've talked about before, like my music teacher says, like there's two types of musicians: those that perform, those that rehearse in order to perform, and those that perform in order to rehearse. And like
fuck,
Anderson Pack is definitely the latter. Like he just loves playing, and like I saw him live at MSG. Like the dude just radiates like I don't care about anything else in life. Like I would be this happy if I was broke. Good thing he's
right.
not, but like he was doing it for 10 years before anyone discovered like anyone knew his name.
Yeah, fuck.
All right,
Yeah, he's definitely like a gem.
yeah,
But yeah, we will wrap this up. Hopefully, one day we get the Red Hot Chili Peppers on doing a halftime show.
they already did. They did like
But
3 years
yeah,
ago with Bruno Mars. Like three. Remember they did it with Bruno Mars like 5 6 years
sure.
ago. There was like a whole controversy because they weren't performing any of their instruments live because the like Super
Mm,
Bowl like halftime show committee didn't let them because it was like too difficult to like set it up in that short amount of
set
time.
up. Yeah,
So everything was pre-recorded.
I
Um,
feel like they could probably have their own show though. I feel like they're like
yes and no. They're
they have
not as
enough of a
like
following.
cultural, but they're not as culturally relevant like anymore. They're
Sure,
more just like their show. Like if you go to see the Chili Peppers, like they're gonna be completely sold out, like arenas, like stadiums. But
sure.
it's not like the amount of excitement that like who was it last year? It was like Shakira and J Lo. Like they're like more
The
culturally
weekend and then
relevant.
Shakira. Yeah,
Yeah, the weekend
yeah,
also. Like these like pop stars. Like I feel like Pete Davidson
for
should get
sure.
one.
They've thrown in like the Rolling Stones and shit. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, fuck.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I guess we'll wrap this up. Number
yeah.
one in the
Episode
books. Hopefully,
one.
this thing saves and we don't
Oh my god!
lose all the
Imagine the audio
clips.
didn't save. But
Our
yeah,
clips are-
episode one, Blubhouse podcast. Follow us on Instagram. We should make a Blubhouse Twitter as well, where we just like put our thoughts out and
Sure,
stuff, or funny shit, also memes.
sure.
We'll do that. But Blubhouse on Instagram, uh, soon to be Blubhouse on Twitter, Blubhouse YouTube. Catch us next week with episode 2.
Free Blubhouse.